Hello, thank you for coming. Sambaho, as they say in Mongolian, namaste. So I'm really happy that you all made it here for today. Thank you for coming. And today we're going to be talking about the gory story of Genghis Khan, also known as Don't Mess with the Mongols. Now, in case some of you are wondering, this is not going to be a serious history session because I'm not a historian, let alone a serious one. I'm just a storyteller. But I do think that history has some of the most amazing stories. Now, a couple of weeks back, I'm back from India from my book tour where I went to schools in Mumbai and Delhi. And at the start of each session, I would ask the children, put your hands up if you think history is boring. And a sea of hands would go up. So may I ask you here today, put your hands up if you think history is boring. Okay, put your hands up if you like going to the movies. Lots of us. Well, to me, in my head, history is kind of like going to the movies. And the story being told is the story of the people on this planet right from the beginning of time. And depending on which show we're watching, that story has action and betrayal and revenge and nail-biting climaxes and unexpected endings, like we saw in 2016 with Trump being elected and Brexit happening and all of that. So this story has happy bits and sad bits and shocking bits and funny bits. It has all the makings of a blockbuster. And today's story is no less. It is as thrilling and unpredictable as it gets. But you might ask me, why did I choose to write this particular story out of all the stories there were to be written? And my answer to that is, I don't think we choose stories. Stories choose us. I used to be a banker many years ago, and then I was minding my business, doing my own thing, and a tiger and a poacher got together a couple of years ago, and they compelled me to write my first story. And I know that sounds strange, but this is exactly what happened. And it was this tiger and that jailed poacher who got together and made me write my first story. This was a picture I saw in the National Geographic about 3 years ago. And something about their eyes, this picture just wouldn't leave my head. It was as if they were calling out to someone, anyone, to tell their story. And so I started reading up about poaching, this big international criminal racket run by this mafia that hires poor men like that man there to kill tigers, to sell their skins and bones and teeth and claws for exorbitant sums of money. And the more I read, I suddenly had this story that was in my head that I had to tell or my head would explode. So I told that story, and that story was a book called Ambushed, which was about a little gadget geek, that little girl there. Her name is Tara. She's 10 years old, like some of you. She lives in Mumbai. She's called the Wii Wonder at school because she's so good at the Wii and Subway Surfer and Temple Run and all of that. And then one day, her dad whisks her off on this holiday to a tiger reserve. And all her friends are going to Disneyland and proper holidays, you know, and here she is stuck in this boring tiger reserve. But she has the most amazing adventure of her life, which beats anything on Subway Surfer. And what happens to her? She actually stumbles across a gang of poachers. And it's up to her to save the lives of a tigress and her 3 cubs. And her only accomplice there is that mysterious boy, a son of a poacher. Can she trust him? Will they be able to save the tigers? Or will they need saving themselves? So that was that story. And when I finished writing it, and a few children read it, and they came to me and said, you know, will you write a sequel to that story? Because we kind of want to know what were Tara's adventures after that. That is pretty much what I had planned to do until Genghis Khan entered the picture. And he wanted a story all to himself. No tigers, no Tara, no Satya, just him, nothing more to do with Ambushed. And from what I had heard about Genghis Khan at that time, I said, I better not mess with him. He wants a story, I'll give him a story. So some of you may say that, you know, Genghis Khan has been dead for almost 800 years now. How did he suddenly come into my life? Now, I have two daughters who are 12 and 14, and since they're growing up in London, they don't know too much about Asian history. So I thought, let me try, my husband and I said, let us try and tell them some stories about Asian history every night. And so we started researching stories about Asian history. And one person came galloping on his horse, conquered the territory in my head, and wouldn't budge. And any guesses who that was? Genghis Khan. But what I found really fascinating about this man was actually his childhood. Because he grew up in the Mongolian steppes. He was a nomad, right? A nomad means somebody who doesn't have a fixed house. He goes from place to place, along with his family, in search of pastures and food. Now, he lost his father when he was 9 years old. And his mother and his siblings and half-siblings were all thrown out of the tribe after his father's death because they called him a half-blood. Because his mother actually came from another tribe. She had been kidnapped by his father. So here he was, this poor, illiterate boy who has been exiled without a father, surviving. Yet he grows up to become the world's greatest conqueror. He conquered everything from the Pacific Ocean. Imagine all the countries in between, right up till the Mediterranean Sea. And he did it on horseback. And he wasn't like Alexander the Great, who was the son of a king. This boy had nothing to his name. He was really, really poor. So that fascinated me. Another thing that fascinated me was the fact there were such conflicting opinions about this man. A lot of people, the majority of the people said, you know, he was the most vile of villains that ever lived. He was bloodthirsty. He would drink horse blood, blah, blah, blah. He killed so many people. And then there was a smaller percentage of people who said, you know what? He was actually a legendary hero. He was the most far-sighted leader the world had ever seen. He united warring tribes in Mongolia and gave them a feeling of pride and gave them a country. Under his leadership, Asia and Europe came into one empire for the first time. And the discoveries and inventions of that time actually shaped the world we live in. So I thought to myself, are they even talking about the same person? I mean, it seems like they're talking about two different people completely. So I decided to put on my history detective hat and do a little bit of time traveling to go back to 12th century Mongolia and meet the man for myself. Now, I'm not very good with directions. So I thought, even coming from King's Cross Station to the British Library, I can get very lost. So I thought I'd need a time-traveling guide. So in the book, our time-traveling guide is a commentator called Yakkety Yak, who helps us along the way. And we, together with him, we went and we met Genghis Khan the day that he was born. Now, when he was born, he was actually not named Genghis Khan. His name was Temujin, which means blacksmith or iron in Mongolian. Now, you might think that's a strange name for a parent to give a child because neither of his parents were blacksmiths. But the reason he was called Temujin is because his father had killed his rival, the chief of a rival tribe, and that chief's name was Temujin. And this was quite a big victory for his father. So when he killed him, he said, how can I remember this forever and ever? And his baby son had just been born. So he said, I know what I'll do. I'll name my son Temujin. So every time I look at him, I can remember this important victory. So that's what he did. Now, some of you may say, why am I going back to meet him when he was just a baby? Why don't I go to the day that, you know, he's already the biggest conqueror? Why don't I go back to that day, just interview him, get my answers, and come back? But the reason I thought it's important to meet him when he was just a little boy is because I think we're shaped by what our childhood is. All of us. Like when I was little, I loved reading stories. I wanted to be an actor on stage. Then I grew up and I had to go and join a bank, and I did all of that. But now I'm finally back to doing what I loved doing in the first place. So I wanted to meet him and understand what were this little boy's motivations? What made him so determined and to overcome so many obstacles along the way? So before we go ahead, now we're going to watch a little book trailer that is made by my daughters, my in-house production team. And that'll give us a little bit of an idea about the book and what Genghis Khan is about. Okay, so in the trailer, I don't know if you noticed, there was a time-traveling crew. So along with Yakkety Yak, who's our time-traveling guide, we have You Heard It, who's a reporter. He works for the Step On It show that brings you the news faster than anyone else in the Mongolian steppes. We also have I read the signs. She's a Mongolian folklore expert, and she helps to translate the signs that the heavens are sending Genghis Khan. So with these three people, we go through the book. Now, can I ask you, who over here is less than 12 years of age? Put your hands up. Okay, now what if I told you that by the time you were 12, you all had to get married, all the less than 12-year-old people? Doesn't sound like a good idea, does it? And it was the same with poor Genghis Khan. Now, when he was just about 9 years old, his parents came to him, they sat him down, and they said, son, the time has come for you to get married. We're in 12th century Mongolia. Over here, boys at the age of 9, they have to go and live in the house of their future bride, get to know her for a couple of years, and when you reach the ripe old age of 12, you should get married to each other. And Temujin is like, Dad, come on, have a heart. I'm having a good life. I'm playing with my buddies. What is this? But his parents say, son, you have to fulfill your destiny. This is what you need to do. So I'm going to read you a little bit of the book. And it's at this point where his father and mother have sat him down and broken the news to him that he is now going to go and live in the house of this lovely little girl called Borte, who's 10 years old. So his father's name is Yesukai. A few days later, Yesukai and Temujin set out for the southeast of Mongolia, where 10-year-old Borte lived with her family and the rest of the Onjirat tribe. On reaching their tent, Yesukai greeted Borte's parents, while Borte swung her pigtails around playfully as she inspected Temujin from head to toe. Yesukai gave his son a hug and handed him over to Borte's parents. I am leaving my son Temujin with you as your son-in-law, he said. I must mention that he is very afraid of dogs. I hope you will help him overcome this fear. Temujin looked sheepishly at Borte, who burst into giggles. Temujin muttered to his dad, Sheesh, come on, Dad. What was the need to tell them that? Yesukai tells his son, Don't worry, my child. There are no secrets amongst family. She will find out sooner or later anyway. Temujin looked pointedly at his toes, not wanting to meet Borte's eyes. When he finally glanced up again, Borte cheekily pretended to bark and exploded into another fit of giggles. Her face shone and her eyes danced. And for the first time in his life, Temujin blushed. Maybe this won't be such a bad idea after all, he thought. On his way home after dropping Temujin, Yesukai, his father, came across the Tatar tribe, his sworn enemies. Remember I told you he had killed the chief of a certain tribe? So he came across that tribe again. They invited him in to have a peace meal with them. Thirsty and hungry as he was, the unsuspecting Yesukai happily agreed. Yesukai, my friend, let's forget the past, said the Tatar tribe elder. We barely even care that you captured our chief and thoughtfully named your son after him. Here's to our everlasting friendship. Yesukai also raised his glass. Here's to our everlasting friendship. Long live. But Yesukai himself would not live much longer, let alone the friendship. The Tatars sneakily poisoned the steak that they served him at that very meal. Ah, revenge is sweet, said the Tatar tribe elder. Maybe I should name my son Yesukai now. Ha ha! Told you it wasn't a good idea capturing these Tatars. They're a saucy lot. Anyway, let's find out what our reporter friend, You Heard It, is so keen to share with us. So now this is You Heard It here first. Reporting from the steppes of north-central Mongolia on this eventful morning in 1171. Clan rivalries in these grasslands have reached a climax. Yesukai of the Borjigan tribe has been killed by the Tatar tribe elders. Forensic experts say that the cause of death is poisoning. This is thought to be a well-planned act of revenge, as Yesukai had some years ago captured Temujin, the Tatar tribe chieftain. That was also news that you heard here first. This is you heard it here first, signing off for now. Have a good day, and do watch what you eat, or your life might just be at stake. Oops, I admit that joke wasn't in good taste. Just before he died, Yesukai sent a messenger to go and call his son Temujin so that he might see him for one last time. But by the time Temujin arrived, his father was no more. Upon his father's death, Temujin decided to remain with his mother and siblings and not in Borte's house, and to take his rightful place in his own clan. But it wasn't smooth sailing at all. The clan elders mocked him. Ha! Look at yourself, you little worm. You know what? Your mother was kidnapped from a rival clan, so you don't really belong here, you half-blood. Who was that other half-blood who had lots of mean people after him? Any ideas? That other half-blood that people write books about, who had lots of mean people after him? Yeah? Yeah, Harry Potter, right? Yeah. So now we're going, the Borjigan clan elders say, now we're going to count to 5, and you and your mother and your half-siblings and siblings have to vamoose from here. As you can imagine, it was a hard time for Temujin's family. They were exiled, starving outcasts, and they needed to hunt and forage for food to survive. Temujin's mother, Holen, bravely did her best to find food for her family, but they were so poor and desperate that they even resorted to eating rats, insects, and marmots to survive. Then one day, when Temujin's older half-brother, Bektir, refused to share some fish with him, Temujin simply killed his half-brother and confirmed his position as head of the family at the age of 10. Can you believe that? He killed his brother over not sharing something and got away with it. And me, for even kicking my pesky half-brother, I used to get time out and get told off. What does Temujin get? He gets to become Genghis Khan one day. Life is so unfair. Anyway, time went by, and when he turned 16, Temujin married Borte, cementing the alliance between their two tribes. And you'd think that now things would settle down for a bit, but far from it. So I won't read further, but after this, his wife gets kidnapped. And after that, it's like drama after drama after drama in this whole story. So now I think we know a little bit about Temujin's story, about Genghis Khan's story. Maybe we're ready for a little quiz. Are we ready for a little gory quiz? So, this quiz is called If Anyone Can, Genghis Khan. And it's going to have multiple choice answers, and by a show of hands, we can perhaps say which answer we think is right. So, what was baby Genghis Khan holding in his fist when he was born? If you notice that picture, he was holding something in his fist when he was born. And our options are a teddy bear, his mother's kidney, a clot of blood, or a horseshoe. Who thinks he was holding a teddy bear? 2 of us. Who thinks he was holding his mother's kidney? No, 3 of us. Who thinks it was a clot of blood? Okay, 5 of us. And who thinks it's a horseshoe? Lots of us. Let's see the right answer. It was a clot of blood. And this was taken to be a sign from the heavens that this child is destined for greatness. Because do we usually hold anything when a baby is born? Does it come holding anything in its hand? No. What is the one thing that made the mighty Genghis Khan tremble in his boots? Was it snakes? Was it cockroaches? Was it dogs? Or was it people threatening to tickle him? Who thinks it was snakes? Who thinks it was cockroaches? 2 of us. Who thinks it was dogs? Oh, lots of us. Anyone for people threatening to tickle him? 2 of us. Let's have a look. It was dogs. And this is not made up. This actually comes from, I haven't made all this thing up. In case you're wondering, I'm just writing anything that I feel like. This actually is from a 13th century document called The Secret History of the Mongols. He used to be petrified of dogs. Okay. Which religion did Genghis Khan ban? Did he ban Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, or none? Who thinks he banned Christianity? Hands up. Who think he banned Islam? Anyone thinks he banned Hinduism? One for Islam. Yeah? And anyone goes for none? Lots of us. Let's have a look. The answer is none. He believed in religious freedom for all, and this was very rare for his time because the Crusades were happening, where people were being forcibly converted to Christianity. Islam was trying to find its foothold by forcible conversions wherever they went. He could have easily asked everybody to follow whichever religion he wanted because he was ruler of everything between the Pacific Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. So I think it was very commendable that he never did that. He believed in religious freedom. Which famous place in India did the Mongols manage to visit? So was it the Taj Mahal in Agra? Was it Siri Fort in Delhi? Was it Cafe Coffee Day in Bombay? That is a famous place. And was it the Char Minar in Hyderabad? So who thinks it was the Taj Mahal that the Mongols reached? 3 or 4 of us. Who thinks it's Siri Fort in Delhi? 5, 6 of us, 10 of us. Who thinks it's Cafe Coffee Day in Bombay? 3 takers. And who thinks it's the Char Minar in Hyderabad? Okay, that contingent there. Let's have a look. It is actually the Siri Fort in Delhi. Imagine the Mongolians, they rode their horses all the way from Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar to New Delhi. Saw bottoms, I would say. And at this point in time, actually this was after Genghis Khan's time, Alauddin Khilji was the Sultan of Delhi, and he had built this fort. And he just went and hid inside this fort. And the Mongols couldn't take this fort, so they went back. An interesting thing about history is the Mongols never managed to capture India, except for a very small part, which is now in Pakistan, northwest India. Okay, next question. What kind of armor did the Mongols wear? Did they wear horse skin leather dipped in horse wee with silk underwear? Did they wear metal chained armor? Did they wear rubber tires? Who thinks it's the first option? Horse skin leather dipped in horse wee. Lots of people here. Who thinks it's metal chained armor? Okay, quite a few takers there. And who thinks it's rubber tires? Okay, let's have a look. Horse skin leather. Now, somebody who said, why do you think they used horse skin leather? You had said it was the answer. Why do you think they used horse skin leather? Anyone? Why didn't they use metal chained armor, for instance? Yeah? Very good. So horse skin leather, 2 things. So what she mentioned is, firstly, they're poor, they're nomadic, right? They can't buy expensive metal. The second thing is, why did they dip it in horse wee? Why do you think they dipped it in horse wee, in horse urine? That makes it really tough. That makes it really tough. Because remember, what are they fighting with in those days? Arrows and spears. They don't have guns yet. So this tough armor is going to prevent the arrow from piercing into their skin. The same thing goes for silk. Silk underwear they used to wear, full-length silk underwear. Silk, again, is a very tough fabric. So the arrowhead would get caught in the fabric of silk. A third very important reason is, when you're riding a horse, do you want to be heavy or light if you want to go fast? Light. So the people wearing metal-chained armor were really heavy in comparison to the Mongol cavalry, which used to just fly across the steppes. Their horsepower was one of the main reasons they won all those wars. Okay. The next question, which of the following did Genghis Khan not introduce to the West? Trousers, the world's first postal system, the world's most sophisticated spy network, compasses, gunpowder, paper money. So he introduced all except one to the West. So what we're trying to find is, which of these did he not introduce? Who thinks it's trousers? Okay, that lot there. Who thinks it's the world's first postal system? Some people there. Who thinks it's the world's most sophisticated intercontinental spy network? There. Who thinks it's compasses? Any takers for gunpowder? Some of you there. And paper money. Okay, let's have a look. It was trousers. He introduced all the other things to the west. How did he do this? By reviving the Silk Road. The Silk Road was this ancient network of routes that connected the east and the west. And it had fallen into disuse. But he was a practical man. He said, if I make this Silk Road operational again, I will get revenue from it. So he made it operational, and it allowed not only for the exchange of trade, but for the exchange of ideas, the exchange of language, the exchange of food. So many inventions passed between East and West. Today if we talk about something small like tulips, when I say tulips, I today think of Holland. Tulips actually went on the Silk Road from Fergana to Holland in the 16th century. So it's all these little things that we don't think about. So apart from trousers, all the rest had been introduced by Genghis Khan. Now, compasses, gunpowder, and paper money were not invented by him. They were invented by the Chinese. But thanks to the Silk Road, they could travel to Europe. OK, next question. Which of the following is not true about Genghis Khan? He was so poor as a child, he ate even rats to survive. At the age of 9, he was sent to live with his future bride. At the age of 10, he killed his half-brother for not sharing something. Or at the age of 30, he ruled the world. Who thinks it's A, he was so poor that he ate even rats to survive? Y'all have been listening really well. Who thinks it was B, that he went to live with his future bride? Who thinks it was C, that he killed his half-brother at the age of 10? Oh my God, y'all have been listening so well. Who thinks it's D, at the age of 30, he ruled the world? Absolutely right. In fact, he was 44 at the time that he actually became ruler of Mongolia. So everybody here who's in their 40s, there's hope for us yet to go down in history. OK, that is the right answer. The next question, which country did Genghis Khan not conquer even a teeny part of? Russia, China, Japan, or Iran? Who thinks it's Russia that he never managed to conquer? One person there. Who thinks it's China? Anyone? 4 of us. Who thinks it's Japan? OK, about lots of us. And who thinks it's Iran? Some of us there. Now, let's see what the right answer is. It is Japan. Well done. But why do you think this was the case? Why do you think he never, yes? It was far away, and he didn't have ships. He only had horses. So he never managed to capture Japan because it was an island. Though his grandson, Kublai Khan, he did try. He tried twice. So he built this big fleet of Chinese and Korean ships, and he manned them with 140,000 sailors. And he sent them to Japan. But on both occasions, the ships were blown to bits by these winds. These divine winds, which the Japanese call kamikaze. The ships were blown to bits, and Kublai Khan could never capture Japan. And in fact, it became a legend, because right from the 13th century up until World War II, no country ever invaded Japan again. They were scared of the kamikaze. And when World War II happened and Japan was again attacked, Emperor Hirohito told his pilots, his Air Force pilots, become my kamikaze, become my divine winds and protect your country. So they were told to take their planes and nosedive, suicide bomb into the Allied warships. So this legend actually dates back to that time. I found that really fascinating when I read about it. OK, what percentage of the earth did Genghis Khan conquer? Was it 5%, 16%, 22%, or 40%? Who thinks it's 5% that he managed to conquer? One person there. 16%, any takers? 2 of us. 22%, any takers? Quite a few of us. And 40%? OK, so it's a toss-up between 40 and 22. Let's have a look. It was actually 16% of the land mass. So 1/6 of the Earth's land he conquered. Now remember, he's doing this on horseback. No ships, no tanks. And in comparison, the British Empire at its peak was about 23 to 24%. So he did pretty well. OK, next question. Which religion did he follow? Was he a Muslim? Was he a Buddhist? Was he a Tangerian? Was he a Christian? Who thinks he was a Muslim? He's a Khan. Who thinks he was a Muslim? Okay, who thinks he was a Buddhist? One there. A lot of us think he was a Buddhist. Who thinks he was a Tangerian? Quite a few. Who think he was Christian? Let's have a look. One taker there. He was actually Tangerian, and I didn't know what this was till I started researching. So Tangerism is the worship of nature. So he was actually deeply spiritual. He used to pray to the eternal blue sky before every conquest. He believed it was his divine destiny to do what he did. And the Tangerians, they worship the sky, the earth, the mountains. And he was so deeply spiritual that he used to actually call people from different faiths to try and understand what it is in their faith, how they can work together. He allowed the buildings of churches, mosques, lamasseries for Buddhist lamas, all of this. And in fact, his grandson was Buddhist. Kublai Khan was Buddhist. Okay, what does the name Genghis Khan mean? If you remember, when he was born, he was named Temujin, which meant blacksmith. But now when he started conquering places, he said, you know, this blacksmith business isn't working because I'm quite a big deal now. I need a name that kind of fits with my personality a little more. So, what does Genghis Khan mean? Butcher, baker, universal leader, or cool cat? Who thinks it's butcher? Anyone for baker? Anyone for universal leader? Lots of us. Anyone for cool cat? Okay. Actually, it did mean universal leader. So the shaman, the leading spiritual person, chose this name for him. Where is Genghis Khan buried? Is he buried in China? At the Taj Mahal in Agra? In the Pacific Ocean somewhere? Or is it that no one knows? Who thinks he's buried in China? Two of us. Who thinks he's buried at the Taj Mahal in Agra? Who thinks he's buried somewhere in the Pacific Ocean? You and you. And who thinks the answer is no one knows? Lots of us. And that is the right answer. So I don't think it could be anywhere. I doubt it would be Taj Mahal in Agra because it wasn't really built then. But really, it could be anywhere. Though, of course, it is believed that he wanted to be buried close to where he was born. So with in the Khenti region, with the river Onon flowing nearby, he wanted to be buried respectfully. And the Mongolians believe it's disrespectful to disturb the dead. So a lot of teams have actually gone to try and find this burial place. Digging is not allowed, but I was seeing a National Geographic video, which was quite chilling. This team of scientists from the University of California, they use ground-penetrating radar to try and find out where there may be a man-made structure under the ground. So they call it a forbidden zone where no digging is allowed by the government, but you can actually use this ground-penetrating radar to see where this tomb might be. And when they zero down on this place, the scientist team go towards it to find out more. And if you watch the video, if you're interested, you can watch it. Suddenly, out of nowhere, there is this storm that comes, an absolutely ravaging storm. It's as if nature is conspiring to keep his tomb a secret. And then they go back because there is no way that they can do anything. They return, and the next day, the same thing happens. And finally, under one of the uprooted trees, they find a bit of ceramic. And they send that ceramic back to California for carbon dating to find out which era that ceramic was from. And it is from between, 1262 and 1295, which really ties in with the period that he died. So it's believed that, it's bad luck to try and disturb his tomb, but people are trying, but it's been almost 800 years, and nobody knows even now. Okay. What was Genghis Khan's favorite book? Was it War and Peace? Was it Black Beauty, since he loved horses so much? Was it Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince? Or was it that he couldn't read? Who thinks it was War and Peace? Anyone for Black Beauty? Harry Potter? And who thinks it was that he couldn't read? You're absolutely right. And do you know why he couldn't read? Because Mongolia didn't have a script at that time. They didn't have a script. But because he wanted to take Mongolia ahead, he introduced a script for the Mongolian language. So whenever he invaded a country, he would take the the writers, the craftspeople, the scientists, the paper makers, the gunpowder experts. He would take them back to his country and take the best skills from them. So after him, he introduced a script, and that's why we have a book called The Secret History of the Mongols, from where I did most of my research. Otherwise, we would have had to rely on word of mouth, what our grandparents tell us about history. What would Genghis Khan's army eat on long journeys on horseback? Kebabs and rice, dried meat, flour and onions, pizza, or would they fast? Who thinks it's kebabs and rice? Who thinks it's dried meat, flour, and onions? Quite a few of us. Who thinks it's pizza? Who thinks it's that they would fast? Okay, let's see what the right answer is. It is dried meat, flour, and onions. And what I found really fascinating is they would carry this actually in a saddlebag on the horse, and it would get cooked by the friction caused by the heat between the horse and the saddlebag. So there was no stopping and cooking. They would just eat it because it cooked due to the friction. It was a hard life. Okay, what would Genghis Khan's army drink on long journeys on horseback? Mango milkshake, order coffee from Starbucks, horse blood, or would they stay thirsty? Who thinks it's mango milkshake? Lots of mangoes in Mongolia. Who thinks it's Starbucks? Lots of Starbucks in Ulaanbaatar. Who thinks it's horse blood? Some of us. Who thinks they'd stay thirsty? Let's see what the answer is. Okay, it is horse blood, but let me tell you this before we jump to conclusion. There is a second side of this story. So it's not like they did this all the time. They did this only when needed. They would nick a vein in the horse's neck. If you look at the cover, they nick a vein in the horse's neck, and they take a small portion of blood out, and they would drink it, because this was a survival tactic. This was not something they had for fun. This was a survival tactic. And I donate blood, and that blood, your body can regenerate the blood within 24 hours. The plasma and the red blood cells take a little longer. Now, each Mongolian soldier actually had 4 to 6 horses that they would ride, so that one horse wasn't ridden to exhaustion. So they were deeply compassionate towards nature and animals. And they knew, even practically speaking, that their lives depended on their horses. So they would do this. I mean, when I first heard about how did they drink horse blood, it was like, but there was a reason they did this. And recently I was researching, I just interviewed Dr. Sharad Paul in the session before, and I was researching about people are actually using shots of blood now to young people's blood. They have shots of that to get vitality and virility and things like that. So maybe there was some science to it. I don't know. There are apparently things called vampire facelifts that they inject blood into your skin and stuff like that. I don't know. But I'm just saying that when we look at it, remember there's always a second side of the story to every story. Okay, next question. How many children did Genghis Khan have? None? 782? Yeah. 19? Or too many to count? Who thinks he had no children? Anyone? One person. Who thinks he had 782? Okay, who thinks he had 19 children? Lots of us. Who thinks he had too many to count? Okay, let's have a look at the answer. It was too many to count. In fact, apparently 16 million males in the world today are descendants of Genghis Khan. So there was this study done. There's a Y chromosome that gets passed unchanged from father to son. So 16 million males in the world today have Genghis Khan's Y chromosome. Equally, enough women may have his genes, but there's no Y chromosome in women to track that. So 43,000 descendants of Genghis Khan have a birthday every day. Yeah. So there's quite a few Genghis Khan descendants. Since he was illiterate, what did he use to help his soldiers remember his commands? Twitter reminders, Facebook posts, rhymes, or color-coded banners? Who thinks he used Twitter? You do, don't you? Who thinks he used Facebook posts? Anyone for rhymes? Okay, a few of us. And anyone for color-coded banners? All right. And the answer is rhymes. So actually, in the book, you'll see Genghis Khan doing a lot of rap. It's not me going crazy. He actually used rhyme. Okay, how are Genghis Khan and Babur related? So those of you who haven't studied Indian history, so Babur was the founder of the Mughal Empire in India. And were they related? Let's find out. So the first option is they were not related. The second option, Genghis Khan was Babur's grandfather. Babur was Genghis Khan's grandfather. Or was Genghis Khan Babur's 12th great-grandfather on his mother's side? Who thinks it's the first? They were not related. Okay. Who thinks Genghis Khan was Babur's grandfather? Two of us. Who thinks Babur was Genghis Khan's grandfather? Three of us. Who thinks Genghis Khan was Babur's 12th great-grandfather on his maternal side? Lots of us. Let's have a look. That is correct. This drove me a little batty trying to get their family tree together. But yes, that is correct. And there is a family tree in the book for a better idea. Okay, that's the end of the quiz. But before we go on, I must tell you that this book would not have been written had it not been for the British Library. Because there were so many conflicting opinions about Genghis Khan that I had to dig a little deeper. And I needed to refer to sources from the 12th and 13th century. So I set off for the British Library, and I would land up here like a bad penny. And you're not allowed to take books out of here, obviously, because they are rare, and you can't be traveling with them in the tube. So you had to only carry a pencil and a little bit of paper inside in a see-through bag. And most days I'd forget my reading glasses, and then I had to go back to the locker, get my reading glasses out. But there were 3 books that I really, really wouldn't have written my book without. One was the Babur Nama, which was written by Babur. This is his autobiography. And this helped me to get the connection between the Mongols and the Mughals. And there was, as I said, one particular, in those 12 or 13 generations, one particular link I just couldn't find. And then this book helped me find it. And I wanted to get up and do a little happy dance very quietly. Then I didn't come back to the British Library for a few days because I was a little embarrassed about that dance. The other book was, of course, The Secret History of the Mongols, which is written in the 13th century, shortly after Genghis Khan's death. And it was actually commissioned by one of his relatives to write it. So when I started reading, I said, this is going to be biased. This is just going to be one of these books that glorify him. But I was really pleasantly surprised that this book, it was a very unbiased account. It said things like he was afraid of dogs. He would cry when he saw dogs. It said things like he killed his half-brother at the age of 10. I mean, they could have easily buried these facts, but they're all there. So it gave me hope that this is an unbiased account. The travels of Marco Polo. So Marco Polo actually came to Mongolia in Kublai Khan's time, after Genghis Khan, in his grandson's time. But his travels were a fabulous source to know what life in Mongolia was like. And he really praises the system that Genghis Khan had put in place along the Silk Road. It really helped him in his travels, because as I said, the Silk Road was a very dangerous place to be in those days. What I liked also about Marco Polo's accounts, he had grown up in Venice, but there was no looking down on a culture that is different from me and you. It was a very a lovely account, because I think that's what we today need to adopt. Just because it's different, it's not better or worse. It is what it is. Okay, now I'm very, very, very happy to have with us today. It's called Meet the Mongols. So I have 2 very special guests, and I would request them please to come on stage, Oduntuya and her very lovely daughter, Kate. And they're both from Mongolia, and they live in London, and they've been kind enough to come. Oh, I should probably... Yeah, and actually, Odna has sent, thank you so much, please have a seat. Odna has sent me some lovely photographs of Mongolia. She grew up in Mongolia, and they will be on the website. I'll give you the name of the website, because it was a little late to put them on our slides here, but they will be on our website. Okay, thank you so much for coming. So, Odna, I'm going to read out a little bit about you, because you're a very accomplished person, and thank you for making the time to come here. So,
thank you for having us here today.
And Kate.
Hello.
Kate, maybe you
It's
want
our
to.
pleasure to be here today, and it's a big honor for us to represent Mongolia and Genghis Khan on this stage and hear all the wonderful stories that our Nayanika wrote.
Thank you, Adna. So Adna is the CEO of the Association for the Development of Mongolian Women in Europe. She graduated from the Institute of Foreign Languages in Ulaanbaatar. As a professional interpreter, she has worked for a number of international organizations, including the World Bank and the United Nations, in implementing development projects in Mongolia. She holds postgraduate degrees from London and Mongolia. Kate is her lovely 10-year-old daughter who is passionate about horse riding. Okay, so Adna, can I start with you? You grew up in Mongolia and you moved here in your 30s. So can you tell us what was your childhood in Mongolia like and how is it different to Kate's childhood in London?
I grew up in Mongolia in a small village in the southern part. The area is called Gobi, very close to Chinese border. And I studied in the small village until I'm 14. And then I was sent to the boarding school in the nearby town in the Soviet area. And Mongolia was very different by then. And Mongolia was heavily influenced by Russian culture and under not kind of strong, but very diplomatic control under the Russians. So I came to the boarding school to specialize in Russian and maths. And then I was accepted to study English and Russian in the university in Ulaanbaatar. By the time I came to the university age, Mongolia was changing, democratic revolution was happening. So I'm in a way very lucky to live through the two areas, experience two different systems in Mongolia, Soviet influenced culture and very democratic Mongolia as of today.
Right. And I believe Genghis Khan's name was banned from the history books in the Soviet era. So your history books didn't mention Genghis Khan at all.
You are right, completely right. So yes, we were taught Mongolian history in the secondary school. However, I don't remember my history teacher mentioning even his name. So
wow.
I had kind of fear in me. If I mention it in the public place, I could have gone into trouble thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, my
But
God.
that was the culture at the time. So Mongolia was a communist country. We were dictated in a way what to do, what to learn. It was compulsory to study Russian language at that time only. We didn't have any option. So I was lucky to study English because I was just about graduating my high school and Mongolia was opening up. And not many Mongolians traveled before 1990s. We used to go to Russia, maybe, China was closed too.
Okay. and can I ask you, you know, you mentioned that the people live in gers in the steppes. So do they still live in the gers there?
Yes, we still live in gers.
So gers are these round tents that are...
Actually, it's in my bag. I've just forgotten. Maybe my friend can pass it on to me. Oyenga, can you pass my bag for me, please? Sorry. Oh, I have it. Sorry, I just...
No worries. Is that a picture of a ger?
This is actually a ger itself.
Oh, wow. Oh, lovely. So these are
This is our national dwelling. This is very quick, compact, mobile dwelling. So Genghis Khan had probably the most luxurious, the big size one. They used to put it on a horse carriage. And the horses, this is kind of mobile home.
Right. Okay, lovely.
Give this to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
40% of the population in the countryside still living in the gears. Nomads, 100%. You wouldn't see any nomad living in a house these days. They still use the same accommodation. So we, on the northern top part of the gear is always sacred space, and they put Buddha and religious items. And after the 1990s, this altered a little bit. We started proudly displaying Genghis Khan portraits. So in this gear, you can see Genghis on the top of the gear.
It's interesting you say that he lived and died in a gear. So Genghis Khan never actually built any monuments for himself. He didn't want any big statues. So in a sense, he was a humble man. And I think the only physical structure he built was bridges to connect Mongolia with the rest of the world. Exactly. And another thing I found really interesting was that he championed girl power. So he actually, his key advisors were women. And we were talking earlier, Odna, that even today in Mongolia, that equality, I think 12th and 13th century Mongolia, the position of women was far better than the position of women in Europe, for instance, or anywhere else in the world. And you were saying that even today, women have a very equal role in society, if not better than the men, right?
Yes, that's true. Genghis Khan apparently was very kind to women, and he had unlimited numbers of daughters. Nobody really counted his daughters.
Right.
And his daughters helped him a lot in his business. So he was the one came up with this famous quote, "Let us reward our female offspring."
Right.
So he was. We use that quote quite a lot when we do the Women's Award ceremonies around Europe.
Right,
so, yeah.
Right. And if I can quickly ask Kate, so you're a keen horse rider, Kate, so that's a very Mongolian thing to do. Horses played a very, very important role in Mongolia's history. So you've been riding for a while? Yes? Lovely. And this is your book on the Nadam festival?
Yeah. Yes.
That's lovely. So I think I'm being told that we're running out of time. So thank you so much, Odna and Kate, for coming here. And
thank you so much for having us. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Before we wrap up, I'll just tell you very quickly this little story about a few weeks ago. An aunt of mine found a photograph on the internet. And do you remember I told you that I think everything happens for a reason. The stories we write are written for a reason. Now, when I was a little girl growing up, my grandmother used to tell us stories of this place that she grew up in, her ancestral home. And that is now in Pakistan because the partition happened in 1947, and I grew up in India. It was not very easy for us to get visas to travel to Pakistan. So I always wondered what this place was where my grandmother grew up. And then my aunt found this photograph a few weeks ago, and she put it on Facebook. And, oh, this is, do we have time? This Mongolian tooth fairy dragon story I will tell you after this, but it's really lovely. Sorry. So this was the photograph that she put up. And since I'd never been there, I just sort of Googled this village called Bhera. And the first thing that came up on the page was that Genghis Khan had been to Bhera. Genghis Khan and the Mongols had been to Bhera. And I got goosebumps at that moment. Because I was just thinking, well, he's been to my ancestral village where I haven't been. So maybe that was the reason that I time traveled with Yakkety Yak and visited his ancestral homeland in Mongolia. I don't know if that was the reason. I don't know why I actually wrote this book, but I'm really glad that I did. And I'm going to end on the note of the Mongolian tooth fairy dragon. I cannot tell you how heartening the response has been of the Mongolians and the Central Asians in London. I'm getting not only from London, from Ulaanbaatar, I hope I'm saying it correctly. I'm getting emails from Mongolians all over. And this little boy, he's called Hadi, and he used to get a Mongolian tooth fairy who came on a dragon. And those are postage stamps from Mongolia. So he's growing up in London, but this was his connect with Mongolia. His tooth fairy didn't come on pink wings or anything. She came on a dragon from Mongolia, and she told him stories about Mongolia. And that to me was such a lovely thing. We actually had planned to do a little more reading with my daughters who have written most of this book, but we're out of time. But thank you so much. You've been fabulous. Thank you for listening. I need to leave now because Genghis Khan and I have our horses waiting for us. But thank you. Sure. Yeah, you can announce for that.
We'd like to thank Ms. Mahtani for this lovely session. Books are available right behind you, and the author will be doing book signing there. We'd like to thank our festival sponsors again, and thank you so much for coming. Also, please feel free to tweet using the hashtag ZJLFATBL. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And there is also, for any children who want, there's a Mongolian word search that you can take home. And if you feel like filling it in and sending it back to the email that is given, there could be exciting prizes to win. So my daughters will distribute those word searches to you if you feel like doing that. Thank you again.